Hi, welcome to Connecting the Dots. This is continuation of series of making production ready code. In the last session, we analyzed benefits of continuous integration and set up a CI pipeline to run unit test cases when pull requests are created. This step prevents merging unstable code to master. If you have missed my earlier video, please check on notification at the top or link in the description to set up CI for your project. Please subscribe to the channel for more updates. Also, if you have any questions, please mention those in the comment box below. I'll try my best to resolve those. Nice. Let's get started. This is the pull request that I created last time. And for this pull request, test cases are failing, as you can see here. And as these test cases are failing, our CI pipeline is making sure that merge button is also disabled. Today we will fix all these test cases. This step will fulfill the API contract that we specified in test-driven development session. As per API contract, getAllAnimals API should return 400 HTTP status if breed or type in the request have less than 3 characters. Also, getSingleAnimalInformation API should return 404 HTTP status if there is no animal present in the system. This same contract is mentioned in our README file also. To get these HTTP status codes and validating API requests, we will use javax.validation framework and response entity exception handler class, which is provided by Spring. I will quickly complete coding part so that we can go over each piece in detail. Okay, now I'm done with all the coding changes. Let's go over them one by one. To add support of validation framework in Spring Boot, you have to add Spring Boot starter validation in POM file. Once this is added, you can use all javax validation annotations and functions in the request classes that you are using in controller methods. In our case, for example, let's say to get information of all animals, we are using all animal request object. Here I have used size annotation because we want to check if the type or breed, if it has less than 3 characters, then we should throw an error. Along with the size annotation or the constraint, we can pass the message to user saying why this request has failed. In current case, I have created an enum of error messages containing different kinds of errors and the different types of error codes that it can have. For example, let's say the size is not valid for type, then I am returning error 1001. If breed is not correct, then I am returning 1002, and so on and so forth, and the description of each error associated with it. For now, I have written error messages in English, but it is possible that your client can say that it wants messages in particular languages. That support can be added in internationalization, but for now, let's skip that part because it can be covered in the next sessions. I have created a method which accepts a code, and based on that code, it can return the error message which I need, and this method will be useful when to get the actual description from the error code. If I go to my request class, you can see I have given the code which to return if the error happens. And this is just one annotation that I have used. There are multiple annotations that you can use based on your needs. The full list of annotations is present in this URL. And there are many different constraints like minimum, what should be the minimum length of the string, the value or the request parameter should not be null, or it should have a date in past, and many. You can go to this link and use any of the validation that as per your need. With this, we are done with the API contract. If you remember, whenever there is an error, we have to return a JSON response like this, which will have code and description. Let's see how to do it. This can be done using controller advice and response entity exception handler. To do this, you can add a public class and annotate it with controller advice annotation. How it works is whenever a controller throws any exception, any runtime exception, then it can catch it and then you can modify that error and send whatever response you need. And this is a helper class, response entity exception handler, which has many methods and predefined error response that can be returned if there is an error. For example, let's say your request uh, has any binding exception or type is not matching, then this is a method. Likewise, there are different kinds of methods that you can override in this global exception handler and then you can return whatever JSON response you want. For our case, whenever controller is accepting a request and it is trying to map all the request objects to this all animal request object, then we usually get binding exception. Then we can override this binding exception method. If you search for it, you will get this method. There is a default uh, behavior of this method, but you can override it and return the exception response that we want. So here what I have done is in field error, the default I get the default message. The default message here will be this message, and it will be code in our case. And based on that code, I am preparing exception response, and this is custom class that I have created in the presenter, which will have code and description. I am populating code, which is from the message, which is from the constraint, and based on that code, I am getting the message. And if you remember, this is the helper method that we wrote. And then I'm returning bad request with the body of exception response. Important point to note here is we have to tell controller to validate all our parameters, and the way to do it is adding @valid annotation in the method. Once you add it, whenever a request comes to this method, it will try to map all the request parameters to this object, and while mapping, it will also execute all the annotations that you have provided. You can have multiple annotations for a particular field. For example, you can say it should not be null, and it should also have this size. In our case, we don't need this constraint. Let's go to the test cases for all animals. I have done one change. Along with the existence of code and description attributes, I am also checking the particular code that should be written. In case of type is not matching, I should get this type size not valid code, and also in case of breed, I should get breed size not valid code. Let's try to run all these test cases. Those should work properly and all should pass now. Nice, all are passing. In case of single animal information, we should get 404 status code when there is no animal information found in the database. For that, I have created an exception, a custom exception, which is extending runtime exception, and a constructor accepting the error message. In test case, now I want my annual service to throw this custom exception. And I'll also check the code returned. Now in controller advice class, I can handle this particular exception as this. I can use @exception handler annotation and ask it to intercept animal information not found exception when it is thrown from a controller. The way to do is like this. You can create a method accepting this particular exception, and then same as above, you can create an exception response using not found animal code and the description and return it. Now in this case, I'm returning not found, which is 404 HTTP status along with the exception body. Now let's try to run all these test cases for single information. Nice, these are also passing. I have written a sample implementation for animal service. For now, it does not return any valid response, but it is added just to make this particular test case pass to load the context. Let's run all the test cases in our project. Awesome. All the test cases are now passing. If you want to see actual response of this API, what you can do, you can start the application. You can go to Postman and query for a particular API. In current case, I am running this application on 8081 port, and I am passing an invalid parameter for breed. And once I send it, I am getting this code and the description as expected. Let's push all the changes that we have done. Once you push all the changes and then go to the pull request that we created last time in the last videos, you can see all the checks are now passing because all the test cases are now passing, as you can see here. If you are not sure what this is the CI pipeline that we created in last video. If you have missed that video, please go and watch it. I have put the link in the description. Now we are safe to merge our changes in master. Let's go ahead and merge those. Once you merge it, if you remember in the last video, we also created workflow for master. You can see that by going into action, and here you can see that run test cases workflow is also executed for master branch, and it has also tested all the test cases that we have just merged. For now, let's stop here. In next videos, I'll try to cover test coverage reports and how to add those into the project, and also I'll try to add database connectivity for this portal. Till then, bye bye.